Please explain Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. Oh boy, this is mind-blower. It may freak some of you out. I've got a book, by the way, you should get a hold of that will explain this in great detail. It's called Satan is Alive and Well on Planet Earth. It was my second book that I wrote, and it's still available. All right, Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. Now it came about when men began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them. In other words, there was a population explosion as mankind began to greatly explode in the numbers. It says, daughters were born to them, and the B'nai Ha-Elohim, Hebrew for the sons of God. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful. Now I want you to notice something here. There is a very careful distinction made between the sons of God and the daughters of men. There's a contrast between the fact that the women were born of men and that whoever this group called the sons of God are from a different structure altogether. Now, you can go through, as I have many times, go through the whole Old Testament, and you will find that every time the term sons of God is used in the Old Testament, it's B'nai Ha-Elohim. Every time it's used, it refers only to angels, not men. So this has to be referring to fallen angels, because the angels of God wouldn't be going out of their own kind. But before the flood, apparently, it was possible for these fallen angels to cohabit with human women. And so it says that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves whomever they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with men forever, because he also is flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be 120 years. Now immediately after this, it says in verse 4, the Nephilim, which means giants, supermen, were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards when the sons of men, the B'nai Ha-Elohim, the angels, came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Mighty men in Hebrew would have to be translated today, supermen. In other words, the offspring of these angels with human women were supermen. And they were apparently giants. And they were men of renown. In other words, these were greatly known throughout all of the earth. And I think this begins to tell us what the flood was all about and why God destroyed every living thing on the earth, except in the case of Noah and his family. Here it says in verse 11, now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked at the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. And then God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence. Because of them, behold, I'm about to destroy them with the earth. And so he tells them to make an ark. In verse 8, he says something about Noah that's very important. He says, now Noah found favor in the eyes of God. These are the records of the genealogies. The literal word in the Hebrew here is not generations. These are the records of the genealogies of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless, not in time. The word again is genealogy. Noah was blameless in his genealogies. Now, in this greater context, why is that emphasized? Because, you see, he could show that he had never been mixed with any offspring of angel with human women. His genealogy was perfect, and he was a believer. And so those two things were the basis on which God chose who would survive the destruction of all life on planet Earth. Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives, 8 people, were all that God chose, right? Because they were both blameless in their genealogy. They were truly human. No blemish or no mixture there. And they were all believers in the God of Israel. Now, some find that very hard to believe, but I'll tell you, if you follow through on this in the Scripture, you find that there's no other way to see it. If you take Scripture literally, and when the Bible states something as obviously literal, I take it literal, no matter how hard it might be to put it all together. Let me read you something. This is Jude 5. Now I desire to remind you, though you know all things once for all, that the Lord, after saving a people out of the land of Egypt, subsequently destroyed those who did not believe. And, listen now, angels who did not keep their own domain, but abandoned their proper abode, he has kept in eternal bonds under darkness for the judgment of the great day. In other words, this is a special selection and special group of angels who didn't keep their own domain. What's that mean? They stepped out of their proper domain and came into the realm of humans. I think after the flood, God kept that from being possible. He cut that off. But definitely it's talking about a special group of angels who abandoned their proper abode. He has kept in a special place. In 2 Peter chapter 2 speaks of a third place. You know, there's a place of the dead. There's paradise, which before the resurrection was a place of believers in the Old Testament. There was a place called torments, which is where the unbelievers were kept. And then there's another place in 2 Peter where he says Tartarus. It's translated hell, but the Greek word is unique. Tartarus is a place where he says that the angels who didn't keep their proper abode have been put. In other words, those that are part angel, part man are in a special place of judgment. And if you don't buy that, well, okay. But I'm going to take what the literal Scripture says and let the chips fall where they may.